What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're picking up on our Docker deep dive book, this guy right here, and now we're on chapter 6. And in today's video, we're going to be diving into Docker images. We're going to try to understand what they are, how they work, and all the little things that could trip us up if we're not careful. So let's break it all down and let's really try to understand what's going on under the hood. Chapters are listed below as always, so please feel free to jump to whatever chapter interests you the most. With that being said, let's go ahead. Let's get started. First, let's talk about what Docker images are because, well, that's where the book kicked things off. So think of Docker images as read-only frozen snapshots that pretty much contain everything your app needs to run. So that includes things like your libraries, your dependency, basically everything except the kernel. A running container is based on an image, and once it's running, the container and the image are pretty much bound together. That means you can't just delete an image while a container is running. You will have to stop and delete the container first before you can delete an image. Images only include what's needed at runtime and not a full OS. So that's why you will hear terms like slim images or minimal-based images thrown around a lot. The goal is to keep things lightweight, secure, and fast. The book puts it this way: so images are build time construct while containers are runtime construct. So think of images as frozen pizza. So once you put it in the oven and it starts cooking, it becomes a container. Next, the book touched on where the images are stored. When you install Docker, it creates a local image repository, kind of like a little warehouse on your machine where it stores everything you've pulled or built. So when you run a command like docker pull down the image download and save it to your local repository. By default, Docker always pull down the image from Docker Hub, which is considered to be the official public registry. This is where all the verified images live. So when you go to hub.docker.com and search for an image, let's say Nginx, for example, you'll see a green badge next to the name. This means that that image has been scanned, signed off, and maintained properly by Docker. And those images live on a top level namespace, so it will be something like hub.docker.com/_/nginx. But the book also touched on unofficial repository, and those are usually in the second level namespace. So it will be something like the domain name /r/nginx / the application name. And with those, you have to be very careful. They're not guaranteed to be safe. Anyone can push them, but you should be able to see the verified publisher badge next to the publishers that have been verified. But again, you should always be careful with those kind of images, especially with the ones that don't have verified publisher tag next to them. So the next thing the book talked about are Docker tags and the different layer of an image. So when you pull an image, you can specify the tag. A tag in Docker is the label that identifies a specific version of an image. So for example, when you run docker pull nginx :latest, the latest is the tag. If you don't include a tag, Docker assumes you want the latest version of that particular application that you're trying to pull down. So the latest version is automatically pulled down. So if you go to the Docker website and click on the tag tab after clicking on the image, it will give you a list of all the tags you can use to pull down that image. Now here's something most people don't know that the book touched on. A Docker image is made up of multiple read-only layers, and each layer represents a set of file system changes like adding a file or installing a package. Each instruction in your Docker file, so things like run, copy, or add, creates a new layer. And when you pull an image, Docker only downloads the layer you don't already have. If you already download a base layer before for another image, Docker just reuse it. So it basically allows you to be able to save bandwidth and speed things up. You can inspect the layer of an image by running the docker image inspect command. So let's take Nginx for example. So it will be something like docker image inspect Nginx :latest. This command shows the detailed metadata about the image, including the list of layers it's made up of. But even though the images are layered internally, Docker presents them to the container as a single unified file system. So it feels like one solid image, even though it's stacked underneath. All right, so tags are very useful, but they can be misleading. You could pull something like Nginx latest today and get a different image next week when you run that command. So the book touched on something called image digest. Every image has a digest. So basically a digest is a unique hash value that identify a specific version of an image. You can use the digest to make sure you're always pulling the exact same image every time. Docker uses the digest to verify the image before it's pushed or pulled. It's like a built-in integrity check to make sure nothing was tampered with. You can find the digest for an image on the Docker Hub website, but you can also run the docker inspect command to be able to find that as well. Another thing the book touched on is multi-architectural image. As we all know, there are different CPU architecture like AMD 64 or ARM 64, etc., etc. But you don't have to want to manually pull the right version for every machine every time you pull an image. That's where a multi-architectural image comes in. These are actual manifest lists. So basically the metadata that tells Docker which architecture specific image to pull based on the system you're on. This info is embedded in the image manifest, so when you pull an image, Docker checks your system architecture and automatically pulls the correct version. So no need to search for the right image manually, it just works. You can even inspect this manifest metadata using the Docker BuilderX image tools inspect command. It is super helpful if you're working across different devices like Raspberry Pi, MacBook, or cloud servers. The last thing the book touched on is security, and this is huge when you're working with containers. Thankfully, Docker makes it pretty easy to scan your images for known vulnerability. You can use a tool like Docker Scouts to analyze your image and report any issue it's found. So outdated packages, known CVEs, and all the other good stuff that has to do with vulnerabilities. And you can run the Docker Scout quick view command to be able to see that in the CLI. This gives you a quick overview of whether there are any security concern with your image that you're running. You can also check it on the website too if you want to. So if you're building in an environment where security matters, which let's be honest, it's most environments, this is definitely something you should take advantage of. All right, so we're going to go ahead and demo some of the things that we just talked about just to kind of get a really good understanding of how it looks like. This is the Docker desktop. If you're not sure how to install this, we went through a setup in the beginning of the series. I'm using Docker Desktop for now only because I'm kind of wanting to follow along with the book, and the book kind of emphasized using Docker Desktop, so that's what I'm using right now. And later on, we're going to transition to installing Docker on Linux server and all that good stuff, but one step at a time. So here, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull an image. So to pull an image is basically just going to do Docker pull Nginx X. Okay, so one of the things that you see is that this is going to pull an image, and this is going to pull an image, like I said earlier, this is going to pull an image directly from the Docker Hub. And if I don't specify to add a tag, all I need to do is I will do something like colon latest, right? If I put this, it's going to pull down the latest version of Nginx, or what is saved to be the latest version of Nginx and Docker Hub. And we'll take a look at the Docker Hub website in a minute. But if I don't do that, and I just click enter, what Docker is going to do is going to default directly to the latest, right? And then it's going to pull that. It's going to default to the image that have the latest tag on it, and it's pretty much going to pull that down. So it's going to take a while. As I say, my server is a little bit slow. Next video, I'm going to go through like an upgrade process for the server to speed things up a little bit, and that's a video in itself. Once the image is done pulling, you're going to see that everything is complete here. It's pulled all the different layers of the image down pretty much, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you have the digest here. So as you can see, this is a digest that we talked about earlier, and you see it right here. And then it just gives you and tells you that download a new image for Nginx latest. Pretty much that's it. And if you move up here a little bit, as you guys can see up here, you can see that the image has been downloaded to our local server. So now we have a copy of that image locally. So as you can see here, it says Nginx latest, and then it has the image ID, and then it says it was created 27 days ago. And then it has the size of it. So this is where it stores locally on your computer, and you can remove this, of course, by clicking delete, or just by doing like Docker RM and then the name of the image. Most of the time you have to do Nginx latest, or in this case you just do Nginx. It's going to grab the latest and then just remove it, right? So you can remove it here or just do the command line. Next thing that we're going to look at is the Docker Hub website. So if we go here, you can get to this by typing hub.docker.com. This is basically the official repo where Docker pull things from. So if we go back to the Docker desktop here, when you type in Docker pull Nginx, it pretty much just pull it from this repo right here. All right. And if we do search something, I think I already have that in there. If we do search Nginx, it's going to give us all the components that have to do with Nginx. And if you can see here, if we click on that for a second, the main one here, it tells us that, hey, like, this is the official Docker image. And you can see that it's the official build of Nginx, and it has the badge next to it. You can see right there. But if we were to go back one more, maybe I can just go search here and do search again. If we were to go back one more and then try to see, let's go back to Explore and try to see the other repository or the other images, you're going to see that the repository is different. Actually, let me go back real quick and then let's look at this guy right here. So if you see, the namespace is a little bit different here, right? So you have Docker, hub.docker.com, and you have underscore, and then you have /Nginx, right? So this was the stuff that I was talking about, the main namespace there, and that's where the official images live. And then if we go back to Explore or just search, computer is a little bit slow. I said my next video is going to be upgrading my test server, so it's a little bit faster. So bear with me. Things are just a little bit slow. So if we go back to any one of these, for example, it doesn't have to be Nginx, but you know what? Let's go to Nginx and just search for that again. Once it comes back up, if we click on any one of this, let's click on this guy. You can see first it says verify publisher, right? So it's not an official image, it's just a verify publisher. And if you look at the namespace here, it says Docker hub.docker.com, and then you have R, then you have Nginx, and you have Nginx ingress. So this is where it was saying like the unofficial images live in this repo right here, and these are the ones that you have to be careful with. But for most part, these guys are pretty much kind of legit, Nginx INC, and you can see I have the verify badge. So you just have to be mindful when you're pulling things down to be careful as to what you're pulling down to your server, right? So since we're in here, the only thing that we're going to look at are tags. So if I go to tag here, if you remember when we pulled the Nginx stuff down, the Nginx image down to our server, we did Docker pull Nginx, and Docker just pulled the latest version because we didn't specify the tag that we want. So if we go back, all right, you can see that they're different tag here. So if we want to pull this image, for example, you're going to say Docker pull, write the name of the image, and you're going to specify the tag that you want to pull. And this is the name of the specific tag for this specific image if we want to pull that down, right? So if I click on there, it's pretty much this guy right here, right? So you're going to write the name of the image and you're going to say like, hey, just pull this down. So if we go back to Nginx, so it makes a lot more sense. And just try to see if we can find the main image. Let me go back one. Search for Nginx here. And just go to the main one here. And we'll go to tag. And then you can see that these are the different tag. You have like the tag here. So if I wanted to pull this one, for example, I will copy, right? And then I'll go back to this guy, and then I'll just paste that there. And that should ideally, if I click enter, that should ideally pull that specific image that we're just looking at, right? So again, the tag just specify what image you want to pull down. So if we go back here, you can see that right here. And each image have like a different tag, so you can choose which one you want. Another thing to look at as well, this is the Scout stuff that we talked about. Now, the Scout stuff is embedded on the Docker website, so you can see it directly here. When you search for an image, it kind of gives you like kind of the vulnerability one in here, high severity, medium severity, low severity, and then it asks you on specified severity, right? It kind of gives you kind of like the security warning on the image that you're trying to pull down, and so on and so forth. So it's directly embedded on the website, so you don't necessarily have to use the CLI if you do not want to. Next thing I want to look at is we want to inspect some of these images to see the different layers that we talk about. So because remember earlier we talked about the images having different layers, and even though they have different layers, the container only sees it as one particular image. So to do that, since we have two of these images here, we're going to go with Nginx. So it's going to be Docker inspect Nginx. All right, so the Docker inspect Nginx command is going to give us a lot of metadata about that specific image. But what we're going to pay attention to here is the layer. So as you can see, these are the different layers of the image. that you can see here. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. So these are all the different layers that we talked about earlier, and this is how you look at the layer of that of a particular image. If you want to check that, there's a whole bunch of information in here as well too that you can get from this particular image. I think it also has the digest information here. Oh, and for the digest information, so remember you can pull an image by specifying the tag, or you can pull that image by specifying the digest information. If we go back to the Docker Hub here, you can see that it also have like the digest information here as well. So you can pull an image down using the tag or using the digest information. The digest information is just a lot more stable, a lot more secure. You're sure that you're 100% sure that you're pulling down the right image all the time, instead of the tag, wherein if you pull an image today that is latest, right? That's the latest image that's been uploaded and been tagged with that tag. However, if you pull 2, 3 weeks from now, you pull another image and you pull latest, that's the latest image that is being tagged with that particular tag. Maybe it might be different from the version that you want, but the digest information is particular to that image, and you can use that to pull down the image as you see place, right? Instead of using the tag. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much the inspect command. It gives you the layer. These are different layers of the image that you see here. And it kind of just gives you that information there. The other thing that we have to look at as well is the whole multi-architectural image, or the whole multi-architectural metadata that's integrated in the image. So your system kind of is aware of what architecture you're running, and make sure that the correct image is being pulled down. That is helpful because you don't want to go manually hunting down that particular image that you need and download that version and run that version. And if it's not the right one, you're going to go look for another one. So to check that, you can do to inspect an image and see what it has. You can do Docker builder or build X, and we say image tools and inspect engine X. Let me see. That going to be ILD. And we'll go back here. I forgot the I there, and it's gonna run that command. So as you can see, this is the information. You have different. Scroll up. computers. Computer struggle. I can't wait to upgrade this guy, man. It's a very struggle. So if we go back here, different architecture. So if we go to platform type, you can see, let me scroll up. So you have different architecture. You have this platform type, Linux ARM64. And if you scroll up some more, you have another one here. It says platform unknown. So you have different platforms. Scroll down a little bit. You have this guy, and scroll down some more. You have this guy as well. So you have like different platform and different architectural type that your computer will look at and be like, okay, this is the image that I need to pull. This is where I need to pull it from. Let me make sure I pull down the right image and make sure that I don't pull down the wrong image for this particular hardware. So that's how you do that. Next thing we're going to look at is the security aspect of it. So if you remember, we glanced at it real quick when we were talking about the website. So the Scout security vulnerability scan is embedded on the website, on the Docker Hub website. So when you search for an image, it tells you for that particular image. It kind of gives you the vulnerability warning for that particular image that you want to pull down. So it gives you the severity and all that stuff, right? So you can see that on the website directly, or if you want to see it on the CLI, one thing to keep in mind is that you have to be logged in to your Docker account for you to be able to see it on the CLI. If you try to run it without logging in first, it's going to tell you that you need to log in. So just keep that in mind. Whether you're doing it here, doing it on the CLI, wherever you're doing it, especially on the Docker desktop app as well, you're going to need to be logged in. So to do that, it's going to be Docker DOCKR Scout SURUT quick view CKAW, and then we're going to do engine and engine X, and I'm going to click enter. And if this is the first time you're running it, what's going to happen, it's going to send that information up to Docker to be able to pull down that information. So it normally takes a while for the first time you're running it, and it kind of gives you information, tells you like, hey, it's been indexed. That means that it's sending it up to kind of like run it against that information there and then pull it down. So as you can see, pretty much the same thing here. It kind of gives you the information about like your security level, security warning, things that you need to be aware of, or things that you need to look at and stuff like that. and it kind of gives you a little bit more information here to be able to kind of view the vulnerabilities and things like that. So really good information if you're running some things, maybe you're running something in a secure environment. You might need to just check it and say like, hey, I have to be careful when I'm running this because this vulnerability is not something that's acceptable in this environment. So that's something to keep in mind as well when you're running something like this. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it. We've gone over most like pretty much all of the things that the book talked about. So the format for this videos are going to pretty much be like this, where we talk about it, kind of brief conversation about the whole thing, and then we do like a quick lab, just kind of walk through some of the things that we learned. It's a good way to kind of like keep going and keep building on what we learned in the previous chapters and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this guy. All right, so that is pretty much it for chapter 6. Images are the foundation of everything that's built in Docker, and now we've got a much more clear view of how they actually work. If you found this helpful, drop a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting started in this series, and there's much more to come. As always, stay geeking, stay curious, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.